Hi, my name's Riley, and today we're going to be talking about contrasting cultural values. So, first we'll start off with what are values? Values are principles, goals, or standards accepted by people in a culture. They're passed down from families, teachers, religious leaders, and many other people. They come from what people hear, what they read, and what people even see on TV. They establish what is considered proper or improper behaviors in cultures. So, different cultures have different outlooks on ethics, women, and work. And since the workplace is becoming more culturally diverse, we need to be more aware of the values of all workers. And the more that we're aware, the more likely we can deal with problem situations and figure out what really motivates people in different cultures. So the next thing I'm going to talk about is U.S. values and other values. So many U.S. values include quality, directness, attitude towards the future, time, and work. The U.S. believes that all Americans are equal, no matter what education or social status. But in reality, they have like nonverbal distinctions to actually point out those differences. But because they believe in equality, some Americans are actually uncomfortable with displays of respect, like bowing, which is actually common in Asia. The U.S. tends to be really direct with people. We don't like to beat around the bush. We like to be very, open and, get to the point. But in Asia, they don't really value that type of directness. So sometimes it's really hard for Americans in business to read Asian body language. And another difference between the two is that the U.S. values honesty, and they like telling the truth, but sometimes it gets to the point where they don't really want to tell it if they think that it's going to hurt somebody, or if they don't really know, that person that much. But they're kind of less concerned with saving face than people in Asia. The U.S. values time, and we all know that because everyone likes to be punctual. We're really big on deadlines when it comes to work and in school, and we even take time management classes so that we can learn how to do more work in a less amount of time. And in other countries like Latin America, they don't really value time that much, or as much as we do, because if it comes to a deadline, they're not really like, oh, I have to get this done. It's more of a, when I get to it, I get to it. And they really like to live more in the moment. So the U.S. also looks at the future whenever they're making present decisions. Like if someone says, oh, well, if I do this, then it's going to affect me in the future. But when it comes to Latin America, they don't really look to the future for that. They live in the moment. They're more of a, whatever happens, happens type deal. And it's actually kind of a really good way to look at it. The next topic that I want to go on to is semantic differences. And so semantic differences is when you have cultures that are speaking the same language, but the words in that language mean a different thing. And they have an implication or have a different implication. So, for example, England and Australia, they're both English-speaking countries, but their words mean something completely different than our words. So, the English word for homey just means plain, but in England, it means friendly, warm, or comfortable. So that's why it's really important whenever we're talking to people in different cultures, because we want to make sure that our meaning is clear, we avoid using slang, and we're speaking slowly and distinctly. When it comes to attitudes and perceptions, those are rooted in our behaviors and sometimes our emotions, and sometimes those things differ from microculture or dominant culture. So for example, a US male could think that a woman has to stay home and not go to work. But the attitude of the microculture is that women have the right to choose whether or not they want to stay at home or they want to work. In some cultures like Libya, they think that women are subordinate to men. And then in Latin America, they have this machoism where they, or the masculine man, they're supposed to take care of the work. They're supposed to do all the physical things while the woman stays at home and takes care of the family. And when it comes to work attitudes, the US likes to believe that your job is like your identification badge. So basically your job defines who you are as a person. But in Latin America, they believe in living in the present. Work's really, it's important to them, but they see it as more of like a hobby. And, it doesn't really define who they actually are. Religious influences also have a big impact on how business is conducted internationally. In some cultures, like North and South America, lifestyle and religion are separate. But in other places like Northern Africa or Southern Asia, no distinctions actually made between the two because your religion is your lifestyle. So when doing business internationally, it's really important to know the difference in religious cultures because sometimes other cultures need flexibility so that they can proceed in doing religious rituals throughout the day. It really just depends on the culture and their religion. The next topic that I want to touch on is going to be individualism and collectivism. And first I'll start with individualism. So individualism is the attitude of valuing ourselves as separate individuals with responsibility for our own destinies and our own actions. So they value things like independence, creativity, self-esteem, and education. Some individualist countries that I can think of is the United States, Canada, Colombia, Panama, but they also put a lot of emphasis on, just being individualists. And in the US, a lot of emphasis on individualism and value placed on family is important, but the relationship doesn't always exist. So, for example, in Costa Rica, they have individualistic tendencies, but the values extended more into the family structure. So that's why it's really important when looking at cultures within cultures, if that makes any sense. So next is the collectivism, and that places emphasis on conformity, cooperation, and interdependence. They value stuff like responsibility, honesty, respect for your families and for your peers, and politeness. But with both individualism and collectivism, they're both at opposite ends of the spectrum. So we have to make sure that when we're looking at other countries, they're going to have either one end or the other, but they also have some that meet in the middle. And that's why whatever environment we're in, what society tells us is valued, and the values that we're based on cultural learning, it really all makes us very unique. And that's why when doing business internationally, it's really important to understand cultural values because every culture is different. There's differences in language, religion, attitudes, body languages, and as important as it is to understand these values, it's even more important to understand the differences in the values because better understanding them will help businesses in the long run because, like I said before, the workplace is constantly becoming more diverse. And there's so much that we can learn from each other and better our businesses. Like if there's ever any issues that arise in the workplace, companies can have more knowledge in dealing with these problems. And the knowledge that we can obtain from contrasting cultural values can help international businesses work better together and help us learn a lot more from each other.